over the past few decades, we witnessed a breathtaking transformation, from dial-up internet. I still remember as a kid, if I wanted to go on the internet, my mom couldn't talk on the phone, so I get in trouble. So from that to now, like we have, you know, real-time global collaboration. So you have international teams working on the same exact code at the same exact time on a Zoom call or something, right? Which is amazing. So technology has rewritten how we live, how we work, how we think. I'm sure a lot of us have the ChatGPT app downloaded on our phones and we use it almost every single day. Um, but now the pace of technology and how it's growing is more rapid than ever before. Then, especially in the past 2 years, with the rise of artificial intelligence or AI. AI can now write code, which anyone who's a software engineer, you definitely know this. You may even have an AI empowered editor downloaded on your computer. AI can compose music, can compose videos, can diagnose illnesses. So if you're a physician, you're definitely aware at least of the abilities of AI. AI can even mimic, human creativity. And now that's still the surface. We're still scratching the surface, right? Behind the scenes, deeper waves of innovation are already forming. Quantum computing, neurotechnology, synthetic biology, and extended reality. It's no longer, conspiracy theories. It's not science fiction. It's not just what you see in sci-fi movies. And this is often part of what's referred to as deep tech, radical solutions rooted in cutting edge science, capable of reshaping entire industries, entire societies. But with such power comes a lot of responsibility, right? Profound responsibility. What does it mean to be human in a world of machine intelligence? Where do we draw ethical boundaries when our brains can interface with computers or when decisions are delegated to algorithms. Like self-driving cars, for example. If a self-driving car is put in a situation where it has to save either the driver or the life of another driver, which one will it choose? Right? These are ethical questions. How do our moral, social, even our religious frameworks adapt or resist in the face of such change, right? I think all of us are very aware that when it comes to the religious world, there's different reactions to AI, or different reactions to all of this tech. You have certain people who resist very hard, right? You have other people who take it in wholesome, right, with no filters, right? And then you have people who take in but with caution, with a lot of precaution, because there are a lot of moral and ethical questions here. Now, these aren't just theoretical questions. They affect real people, real communities, future generations, and that's why we're here today. Not just to learn about the technology, but to reflect on its direction and our role in shaping it. And honestly, today it's going to be an amazing talk, I'm telling you. We are honored to have with us today a panel of experts, and I'm not just saying that as a marketing, as a cheesy marketing word. When I read off the bios, you see yourself. Today, we do have literally experts in technology, experts in AI, as well as the other side of the spectrum where we have brother Adnan Mukhtar, or should I say Sheikh Adnan Mukhtar, dedicated students of Islamic knowledge that will help guide us through the promise and the pitfalls of these emerging tools. So whether you're here as a student, a professional, a parent, or simply just a curious person, right? Our goal is to empower you and to move you from being a passive consumer to an active, informed participant in the future that's unfolding before us. So, a little introduction. My name is Naveed. I have a background in computer science and I have been working in tech in different capacities throughout the years. I'm also a graduate student at the Islamic Seminary of America, as well as a student at Mishkan University. And I will be your host for today, inshallah, the next session as well. So our first panelist is Yusuf Khan. Yusuf is a senior director of AI and automation technologies. Again, like I said, I wasn't joking. We have experts here, right? A senior director of AI and automation technologies for a leading global tech services company. He is an experienced senior leader with over 18 years of expertise in digital transformation, AI, automation, and business strategy across different industries, working with both startups and some of the top Fortune 500 companies. He is also pursuing his master's in Islamic studies at the Islamic Seminary of America. Brother or Sheikh Adnan Mukhtar is a leader in Islamic education and spiritual development and serves as a board member at Masjid al Husna in the metro Atlanta area. With a strong commitment to promoting respect, unity, bridging sectarian divides, he leads ongoing educational initiatives in local masajids and on social media. He is a graduate of the Asul ad-Din program at Medina Institute in Atlanta. He is currently pursuing a master's degree at the Islamic Seminary of America. Professionally, he is the vice president of sales and delivery at Capgemini, one of the world's top five global IT consulting firms. Um, without further ado, let's start. Let's start by unfolding some of the topics we're planning to cover today, and we'll start with something simple to begin with, to kind of, let everyone ease into this topic of tech. So the first topic is social credits and surveillance systems, and I'll define what that means. Social credits is where people rate your social behavior in real time, right? Think like social media, likes, comments, shares, all that kind of stuff. And surveillance systems are AI-enabled surveillance, you know, surveillance of people. You're using AI. Now, you combine these two together, social credits, how rated your social behavior is, combined with AI that's surveillancing you. That can be a pretty interesting combination. So my first question is to Yusuf. Can you comment on the tech aspect? How real is this? How real are these technologies? Are there current use cases, or is this just something from like the Matrix and the Terminator, and this is just, conspiracy theories?
Thank you, Brother Naveed. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. In terms of the tech, I think we have seen the way these social platforms work, and it's not something that we're using today. It's been out there for at least a couple of decades now. Right? So right from the first time where social platforms like Orkut came into being, it was all based on social credits in one way or the other, which meant that as a user, you have the ability to create content, to share content, and then depending on how likable your content is and how many followers you are, your outreach will continue to increase, right? So the whole system was based on a social framework where more people are following you, the more outreach you get. So that's been there. It's continued to improve in terms of algorithms, and we have also seen the biasness of algorithms. So we'll not get into that for the moment. But think of a social credit system which not just captures the basic information like your number of followers, likes, retweets, shares, and so on, but then it goes beyond that in terms of tuning in into some of your personal information, your social profiles, and so on, and then brings these both together. Now, that's a dangerous aspect. So, all the other information that goes on your profile, and now imagine a system which has the ability to look up your social profile as well as your personal profile and then give that kind of an information out to end users, right? Now, that sounds a little bit scary. In terms of tech, it's already there. There is a system that captures your personal information. There's a system that captures your financial information. Just that those information is currently protected, and there are laws across different regions in EU, in America, in other places. It's only accessed by your providers, basically your financial institutions or your universities or your workforce provider. So those information is protected right now. But imagine a futuristic state where these laws become a little bit fluid for one reason or the other. And now companies or social platforms now have access to your personal information as well as your social profile. Now, there was an interesting episode. I don't know how many of you follow Black Mirror. I'm not a big fan, but I do it time and again just to see what's going on in the tech world. There was an episode a couple of seasons back where they showed this in a real life use case, right? So the way that worked was there's a full-fledged system where using facial recognition and augmented reality, you can actually look at someone and then get the whole biodata right then and there. So if I'm coming across Brother Naveed, looking at his facial thing, I have an AR app which shows his social rating, which shows his credit score, which shows his number of friends he has, and what kind of financial state he's in, and so on and so forth. And now based on that, I can decide whether or not I want to be acquainted with this person, right? Whether he falls in my social criteria and so on and so forth. This becomes a challenge where not only your data or information is exposed, at the same time, there's a critical risk to it, right? Because what's happening now is this data is out there, and then this will start creating those social divisions more and more. And people will now look into people who are kind of within the social strata. So this creates divisions, and I'll let Brother Adnan comment on his part on how ethical this is and how moral this is. But then you look at our emotional state. where everyone wants to be likable, everyone wants to be popular, and these social media platforms have just amplified that behavior even more, especially during COVID, where everyone was on lockdown. These short content platforms like TikTok came up, and people started making funny videos, dancing videos, and they became popular. It's come to an extent where even our Islamic scholars or some of the other leading personalities are not far from this. So everyone is getting into content creation. Now, some are doing it for very good reasons, like doing dawah. Others want to be popular. So now they're making controversial statements, and then there is online debates going on. And with this, I think it's just getting out of hand to a certain extent. Now you go back to the earlier days where it was very simple, and all you had to do is create a nice story, nice post, and then that was about it, creating social wellness or giving voice to the people who don't have voice in certain countries where there's no democracy. So these platforms, which could have done so much good, are now being used in the wrong sense in one way or the other. And this is just going to add up, right? This is just going to profoundly increase in the way that it's misused, misutilized. And some of the other tech dangers are real. So in terms of the question whether the tech is real, absolutely it is real, right? Platforms exist, just that they're not talking to each other or they are protected in one way. But imagine a dystopian world where none of these filters apply, everything's accessible, and then it becomes a huge challenge in terms of moral, social, ethical, and so on. And I let Brother Adnan comment on some of the Islamic viewpoints on this.
الله بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. Yeah, it's a very crazy world. In the old days, before everybody was connected all the time, there was a sense of privacy and security before. And now, not only are we exposed, we tend to expose ourselves, and then we uh, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَفَتَنْتُمْ أَنفُسَكُمْ. And then you put yourself in tests and trials. And it's not that you shouldn't be on social media. There's a lot of khair in it, and there's a bad aspects of it. It's just part of life that we have to deal with. And Yusuf, please, and Yusuf and Naveed as well, please let me know what you want me to specifically highlight. But at the end of the day, we live in a world, whether you were in the old days or the new days, whether you were in the living in huts or whether we're in the midst of walking robots that are, AI and the terminators of the world, like Yusuf said in the beginning, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will test you one way or another, right? الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا. The one who created life just to test you how best your deeds are, how you do. That's all. We are all given a particular level, whether it's our status, our position, the amount of knowledge we have, the amount of the health that we have or lack thereof, the resources we have at our disposal or lack thereof, the likes and the followers we have or the lack thereof. Whatever the case may be, we are all given a particular level, and we are supposed to excel from that level and become better contributors, right? إن الإنسان لفي خسر والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر. Everyone is at a loss except for those who believe and do righteous deeds, and they continue to show patience and gratitude for what they excel toward. I just wanted to lay that as a foundation. One more thing that I want to add is specifically around the everyone is anxious, whoever is social media, and they want to contribute positively, whether through technology, what provisions and resources Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted them, they want to use that to do good, right? They want to make people happier. They want to give people therapy. They want to help people through education in Islamically or technology wise, and such as this podcast, and create awareness. Um, and you will go through these cycles. There's a marketing cycle, it's a hype cycle, and there's a chasm. So there's going to be people who you will have trickle followers in the beginning, and then eventually, inshallah, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses that work in this dunya, because in the akhirah, every good niyyah is going to be blessed. You're going to get rewarded for whatever good you put in, right? وَمَن يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ خَيْرًا يَرَهُ. He will see it. Whatever good you put in, you will see it. There, you will never ever lose the good effort you put in to do something positive. But in this dunya, you're going to be challenged by all kinds of factors. How good of an orator you are, how good of a B-roll you have running behind your videos, for example, how good of the impression you want to make, uh, you are able to make on social media, the amount of marketing you're able to do, whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you, Allah may choose to bless you in this dunya or not. And it's life is a test, right? But what we should always remember, always remember, this is not stressed enough. In Surah Al-Fajr, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says what? فَأَمَّا الْإِنسَانَ إِذَا مَا ابْتَلَاهُ رَبُّهُ فَأَكْرَمَهُ وَنَعَّمَهُ فَيَقُولُ رَبِّي أَكْرَمَنِ. That when the insan is gifted, it was tested, but it's gifted with sustenance, it's gifted with all kinds of good things, and then he becomes happy that, oh, Allah has honored me. Allah has honored me. And then وَأَمَّا إِذَا مَا ابْتَلَاهُ فَقَدَرَ عَلَيْهِ رِزْقَهُ فَيَقُولُ رَبِّي أَهَانَنِ. And when things are taken away from him, when followers go down, or the trends of the analytics on your social video posts are going down, or not getting as many likes or whatever, and you're getting reputations, or you're getting attacked, you're getting negative comments, you're gonna go, ahanan, that I am doomed. I am at a loss. Allah doesn't love me anymore. So that mentality needs to be shattered, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says right after those couple of ayat, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says? Kalla. Kalla bal la tukribun al-yatim, that you do not honor the orphan. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is redirecting what is happening in his dunya, what is happening to you, and redirecting your energy and your niyyah to contributing positively, taking care of the orphans and taking care of the needy. And you need to continue to put in the work, and don't think that whatever's happening to you in this life as a test, whether it's negatively affecting you or positively affecting you, it is going to it's a sign for how much Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves you, and what will be your akhirah, what your akhirah would be like. It's not that at all. So I'm gonna pause here for a second and just wanted to just comment on just general trends of social media and likes and followers, and how that should not bring us down. It should not discourage us from doing things that are positive.
Brother Nan, I'd like to just follow up with two questions.
Yeah.
One is taking into everything you just mentioned, right? What are practical guidelines or tips for, I guess, upcoming Islamic preachers?
Mm,
Should they use genuine content versus should they cover topics that make them go viral? Now, obviously, that's a very obvious question, but
hmm
what exactly? Because think about it, and I think especially as a thesis student, we know this very well because some of our instructors get attacked all the time on social media, right? And a lot of times we're the ones in our communities defending the very professors we're taking classes with. A lot of times that happens, right? But then you do see like younger, like MSA aged, Islamic preachers or people who just came back from maybe overseas, right? They start up their YouTube channels, their social media presence, and immediately the only thing that would get them anywhere is a controversy or attacking X, Y, and Z because that's what attracts people, right? So any guidelines or tips for genuine content creation when they disseminate this on social media?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it saddens me. I'm a little bit, I have a few years over most people who would be watching this video. It saddens me that the kind of themes that are selected, and especially in Islamic content, which are very controversial, and I think the Nia is good, but what they're really trying to do is do exactly that, is to pick controversial topics because controversy sells. Controversy always sells. You're gonna get more clicks and more likes. We should the advice that I will give you is step back and look at your niyyah. Why are you doing something, right? And if that is to get likes and followers, then you're gonna get anxiety, you're gonna stay anxious. And you're going to want to pick controversial topics because there's not enough followers, there's not enough viewership on your videos, or there's not enough likes, there's not enough comments. You're gonna continue to stay anxious. خلق الإنسان هلوعا إذا مسه الشر جزوعا. He becomes anxious when bad things happen, when you're not becoming popular, right? خلق الإنسان هلوعا إذا مسه الشر جزوعا وإذا مسه الخير منوعا. And when good things are happening, you withhold the good things happening. إلا المصلين, except for those who pray. Why prayer? Because that is redirecting your focus. Your niyyah, where is your niyyah? Where are you facing in salah? To Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So always go back to the basics. Why are you doing something? If you're doing it purely for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for the risk that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you of knowledge or ability, and you're contributing through it, whether it's Islamic knowledge or whatever, always find themes and topics that you think this world or your community or the demographic you're trying to impact, what is going to create a positive impact in that demographic. And then let it be up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whether I will have barakah in this here, it will always have barakah, like I said at the beginning. It'll always be reward. You will always be rewarded. We are not held accountable to the outcomes in our lives. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, by his tremendous mercy, is not holding us to account on the outcomes of how major of an impact you were able to make. So many scholars and pious people that we don't even know the names of. How many Sahaba were there around the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Hajjatul Wada when listening to his khutbah? Some estimates say 100,000, even though it may be exaggerated, but there was a lot. How many names do we know out of them? 1,000? No, that is a stretch too. And out of the 1,000, how many do we actually know the biographies for? Hadith science students, they know. It's much fewer. It's less than 50%, maybe 30%. So it's not the outcomes that you will. For example, Asharatul Mubashara, several of them, we don't know much. Their biographies. We don't know their biographies. Sa'ad ibn Mu'adh, Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas. We don't know much about him. We just have a few hadith that we know about him. He's one of the 10 who was given the good news of Jannah, that he will enter Jannah. We don't know much about him. So the advice that I will give you, don't look for the rewards and the result in this dunya, because that is not a sign of whether you are successful or not. The whole Quran speaks about that, right? For example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says all of this is إِلَّا فِي كِتَابٍ in Surah Al-Hadid, right? إِلَّا فِي كِتَابٍ مِنْ قَبْلِ أَن نَبْرَأَهَا. This has all been written for you, what is going to happen to you in this dunya before it is created, before it is realized, right? لكي لا تأسوا على ما فاتكم ولا تفرحوا بما آتاكم, so that you are not saddened by what you lose, and you don't rejoice based on what you're granted. والله لا يحب كل مختال الفخور. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not love those who are self-deluded and proud of their achievements. So that's the advice that I will give you. Always redirect your niyyah and never be despaired. You should never give up, right? وَلَا تَيْأَسُوا مِنْ رَوْحِ اللَّهِ. Do not ever be despaired from the mercy and the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It may be in this dunya, but it definitely will be in the akhirah, as long as your niyyah is pure and you leave it up to Allah. You have the tawakkul that I will get a reward in the akhirah for the good work that I'm trying to do, whether or not it is popular here or not. Ibrahim alayhi salam, did he ever give up? How many followers did Ibrahim alayhi salam have? We, to this day, 80%, 90% of the world, 95% of the world venerates Ibrahim alayhi salam. And during his life, he was severely tested. How many followers did he have? So that's the advice that I would give you, just very, very quickly. I'm sorry if it was long-winded.
No, that was really good. Jazakallah khair. I think really good and definitely very much needed. Um, but now I have another question as a
Mm,
other follow-up. Well, not follow-up, but a little bit different.
mm.
How, from an Islamic perspective, how ethical is AI-enabled surveillance?
Look, you're either surveilled, would take AI out of the picture. Are we not surveilled by people around us, judging us? Looking at our maybe even Google, when Google came out, you know, when internet search became popular, people were searching for each other. People were posting whatever they wanted to post about that. It was always dangerous. Even if you're walking in the middle of Medina at the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, people knew you. It was a very small town, right? It was a very, very small town. Everybody knew each other and everybody is able to judge each other. So regardless of the situation, how can you get away from surveillance? Now with AI in the mix, it's easier, faster. There's a bot out there that's doing the surveillance for you. وَتُعِزُّ مَنْ تَشَاءُ وَتُذِلُّ مَنْ تَشَاءُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give izzah to who he wants izzah in this world, and dhillah to who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to give dhillah in this world. The outcomes of this world should never be the benchmark of your akhirah. It should never be. It must always be your niyyah. There are shayateen around you. You talk about AI surveillance. You're constantly being surveilled. Your thoughts and your whatever is coming to your mind, you're getting whispers. Everything is known about you already. It's, putting AI aside, how can you let that bring down? You constantly have to fight your own nafs that is telling you to do the wrong thing, let alone other people, or let alone other people pointing fingers at you. You yourself uh, is your worst critic. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Qiyamah, what's the ayah? Astaghfirullah. إن الإنسان لنفسه بصيرة. I butchered the ayah. Astaghfirullah. You yourself know yourself the best. Uh, it's in the Quran. So you yourself are your worst critic. So whether it's AI or technology accelerating all of that, um, it it is not worse. Like I said, every generation has their own challenge. In the in small towns, there was a challenge of everybody knowing everything about you. You didn't have a sense of privacy. You didn't have boundaries. Now your life is out there. What I would recommend is don't put yourself into situations where you're tested. وَلَكُمْ فَتَنْتُمْ أَنفُسَكُمْ وَتَرَبَّصْتُمْ in Surah Al-Hadid. You put yourself in trial situation. Obviously, you're going to be tested. And those who are more righteous, more pious will be tested even more. And the tests are going to not become easier. They're just going to be different. In our age and time, the tests are different. You're being surveilled. Don't expose yourself too much online. If you want to be just a regular Ahmed or Muhammad, right? Uh, just don't expose yourself. But if you are exposing yourself over social media, your niyyah needs to be correct, and you need to be prepared that you're going to get attacked. You are going to get attacked from left, right, and center, not just from yourself, not just from the people around you, but people on the social media. And there are bots that are out there ready to attack you. Just remember, if you expose yourself, you're going to have that, and that is part of the test. Are you still then patient? Are you still grateful? And are you still forging forward? And are you letting that bring you down? Or are you powering through that and trying to still do the right thing, which is to the best of your ability? And that's the advice that I would give you. I
I'd
hope
just
that
like to
answers your question. Yeah,
Yeah, I'd just like to add to this. I think in terms of
yeah.
the traditional surveillance system like CCTVs and stuff, right? Those already exist, like Brother Adnan said.
Mhm.
And they have been existing for a long time. And they have done more good than harm, at least till now, right? In terms of overall security. We have seen previous times, decades back, where with the lack of this, we could never nab a killer or could never nab someone who's robbed a store, right? Now this
Mhm.
has done more good. So that's one part of it. The second part is now with so much of data getting collected, it makes sense to use AI to churn that data and to find
Mhm.
patterns and behaviors and so on and so forth. Again, in the name of security, all of this is good and great and so on, right? What becomes a challenge is when this is taken one step further, and now AI is given autonomy to take actions based on the data that it has identified, right? So, for example, certain parameters are defined to, let's say, in war zones, and we have seen this in the current war as well, where AI systems were used to identify and eliminate targets almost autonomously, right? Now that becomes a challenge. Who decides whose life to be taken, and then whether in a state of war, I think things are a little different, and we are not going in that direction. But then in other senses, if a full autonomy is given to AI and it starts being biased because AI is biased to a certain extent, and then it starts identifying people and classifying them and tagging them, and all of this data goes into some central database, then it becomes a big challenge, right? And the other point, and I know we have some parents on the in the audience as well. I think what Brother Adnan said is sharing less is always key, right? So we have to educate our youngsters that don't share so much information, especially with pictures and locations and stuff like that, because now it's very easy to replicate your digital image, right, and misuse that for wrong reasons. So our upcoming generation has to be more aware, because now everyone is into content creation, right? You see 15 years old, 18 years old having thousands and thousands of followers, even in a small city. Now that becomes a challenge because we have no idea on the kind of content they're creating, the kind of content they are sharing. And it goes back to our original point where this is done to become famous, to get more likes, more followers, maybe even generate money and so on. But then there are risks to it, right? So there has to be some form of governance at home with there's so much under our control, right? And there's so much not in our control, right? Especially with the younger generation. So there has to be some honest discussion we need to have with the kids in terms of what's right, what's wrong, and show them the adverse aspects of these oversharing or stuff like that, right? And at the same time, to Brother Naveed's point, I think there should be some form of guidelines. And I know that's always difficult to achieve in 1 billion people across the globe, is we should be respectful of each other when we are putting comment. Even if I'm, let's say, I'm a scholar, I'm trying to go viral and stuff like that, right? Like Brother Adnan said, your genuine content will get you there, inshallah, one way or the other. And it depends on what your niyyah is, right? If your niyyah is to spread the right message, that's more acceptable in the eyes of Allah versus making controversies, demeaning each other, and so on and so forth. And we see this today, right? Especially in the Indian subcontinent, where so much effort is being wasted on countering and each other and pulling each other down, whereas the same amount of time could have been used to discuss topics which are beneficial for the ummah, right? And we as users, we kind of get in those circles, and then our feeds are just full of debates and right and so on and so forth. So that's all negativity. We don't need that kind of negativity. In fact, these algorithms are made to keep us in bubbles, and if we start following this, then it'll keep us in those bubbles, right? So we need to break out of that as well and start more towards seeking knowledge, seeking genuine knowledge. And there's a stake for us as well as users, right? It's not just technology and it's not just the content creators. We as users, the kind of content we consume is what we'll get. So it becomes a bigger responsibility on us not to promote these kind of content, and then be very careful in terms of what we share, what we consume, and then be better socially as well, inshallah.
Just add to that, adding to what Yusuf mentioned, disinformation, this is sort of touching a little bit into a topic we're going to cover. But disinformation really drives a lot of far right rhetoric in countries around the world, including our own country here. Um, People can, in fact, just yesterday, I won't mention names, but I saw an AI deepfake of a certain Muslim politician, and I could have sworn it was real, like to the point that I was shocked. Like basically, someone made an AI deepfake of this guy, saying the exact opposite of his policies in the country that he rules. And I was like, whoa, what just happened? Like, did he just, have a change of heart? Then I'm like, wait a sec, no, this is too good to be true. Then I saw in the comments everyone saying, oh, it's a deep fake. And but you see how, I mean, a lot of political hatred, a lot of Islamophobia, in countries around the world is literally being fueled by, content like this.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, before deepfakes, we still have fake people, for example, around us. They're constantly challenging us, right? They're hypocrites, right? One face in front of you, another face behind you. So just it being digital and just now being more accessible, tests are getting harder. It doesn't mean things are really changing. It's all the same. It's always been the same. It's always been the same. Those people who went to the Battle of Tabuk, the expedition of Tabuk with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, thousands of them, out of them, they were hypocrites. They were there to kill Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They had a murder attempt on him. When he fell off the horse, they were laughing and scouting, right? They were building the Masjid Darar and saying, "Oh, Rasulullah, come to this masjid and honor us with your presence." And that masjid was established at the command center of hypocrisy in Islam. And the whole purpose of Tabuk was what? To eradicate, not eradicate, to help expose hypocrisy in Medina, which was the last threat before Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed away. All of these tests are there to expose hypocrites versus genuinity, right? The uh, what what is in your heart? What is in your heart? It's getting exposed through these tests. For example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, um, uh, ما كان الله ليذر المؤمنين على ما أنتم عليه. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not let the believers leave them alone on what they are. You think you're not going to be tested? ولكن حتى يميز الخبيث من الطيب, until the evil is revealed from the pure, right? Both are exposed. So that's the whole purpose of the test in this life. The impure and the pure are being separated. The evil is getting exposed. The true belief is being tested through these trials and tribulations. And how much are you still striving to forge forward with your intention being pure, showing patience, being grateful, following the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, still having the tawakkul, not having any spiritual doubts in your mind, trying to do the positive thing. That's all. That's all in every single stage of human technological advancements or lack thereof. This has always been true. This will always be true, regardless of where you are. You could be as far as on the Andromeda galaxy, and you're gonna different situation, and you're gonna have the same. You're gonna be put through the same tests.
I don't know. It's very, very true, and you just hope you're on the right side of history. After all this is done.
As long as you know you make the best judgment. That am I doing the right thing? And is my niyyah pure? And am I making the best judgment? You're not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're not always going to make the right decision. You're going to make a lot of wrong choices. You do istikhara. What do we ask in istikhara? Oh Allah, I'm about to do this. Oh Allah, help me make this decision by adding barakah if it is the right decision, or putting up barriers if it is the wrong decision. We should make istikhara all the time. You should make this dua all the time. You should have that attitude all the time. You're not gonna get it right. You're gonna make a lot of wrong choices. That's okay. What is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looking at? Did you try? Man ahsana amala. Whoever did good, whoever made the best choice, just roughly translate. Whoever made the best choice in their deed. Their niyyah was pure, and they made the best choice in their deed. And what did Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam tell us? If you make the right choice, you're rewarded twice. If you made the wrong choice, but you still tried to do the right thing, you still get one reward.
I don't know. So I do want to move on, inshallah, to our second topic. Jazakallah khair again to both our panelists for everything you shared. Now, the second topic, a little bit getting a little bit deeper into this, right? Augmented reality, virtual reality, and mixed reality. And I'll hand it over right away to Yusuf to go over a technical overview of what these mean, what they are, do they even exist?
Sure, thank you. So I know we said no slides, but this was a deep, heavy topic. So I brought in, promised just one slide on this, right? So let me just share my screen and all right. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right. Now, all these virtual reality, augmented reality, they all based from the actual reality. Now, that is reality in real time, which is we view things, we experience things, we feel things, and so on and so forth. So that's the base reality, and everything else goes, which is not real in a sense. Augmented reality, or AR as we call it. Now, this is where virtual objects are kind of rendered from a viewer's perspective, right? Now, this is where you can scan objects and then you can move the objects around and you can see how they would look in a different setting, how they would look on a different background, different texture. Even in a sense, our virtual backgrounds are in one way AR, right? Because they're bringing external objects into a reality as viewed by the audience or the by the users. Now, AR is a technology which is very real. It's been there for over a decade now, and it's continued to improve in terms of the first time where it was introduced and the use cases that it had. So that's pretty much real. It exists, and there are very good use cases that we will cover very shortly. Now, before going to mixed reality, let's cover what is virtual reality, which is on the rightmost corner, right? So, starting from reality, which is real, to virtual, and everything else in between is one way or the other, it's a hybrid form, right? So, when it comes to virtual reality, this is the fully immersive technology where you are in a virtual world, right? Everything else in the virtual world is also virtual, it's not real. These are objects, simulations, these are characters, these are settings of whether it's a game setting or whether it's some other setting, right? Now, this is where users can interact in that virtual environment. There are certain use cases, we won't go into good, bad, and so on, but we'll define where they stand as on today. And these are technologies which are again very real and they continue to improve. There's a huge industry behind this now, which is monetizing this more from a gaming standpoint and also some experiences. Now, when it comes to mixed reality, it's kind of hybrid of both, right? So mixed reality is where you're bringing in physical components in a digital world or a digital component in a real world, right? Now, the way this works is, for example, you are in a healthcare setup, and then you are bringing in a 3D image of a human body, and then that gives you the ability to study the different parts and bones. So imagine that where something is real in terms of an actual 3D scan of a human body, and then you're learning that, you're experiencing it. So we have seen this in high-tech movies like Avengers and all, where you have this large screen displays and the mechanical components of a machine can be now zoomed in, and fault could be found and fixed. So that's mixed, where you're bringing something in your real world. That's something is still a digital replica. It's not a real thing. It's still virtual. It doesn't, like, you can feel it, and you feel it in the sense that you can play around with it. You can have different views, but it's not real. It doesn't exist, right? You turn it off and it goes away. Now, there are various use cases of that. For example, in AR, you have your furniture companies, right? So you can buy furniture from Amazon, from other companies, click a photo, see how that looks in your living room, and so on. So those are some very good practical use cases of something like an AR. When it comes to VR, it's mostly immersive and it's mostly related to games and virtual worlds and so on. And we have a separate topic to discuss that in detail. But those are the most use cases now. Now it has sound as well, and it has simulations which will make it more real, right? So the idea is to make these technologies more and more real. I don't know if there's an agenda to it or it's just the evolution of technology, right? But then in a way, these are taking humans away from reality and getting more and more into a virtual world. And we'll comment on that in a bit. So lastly, the use cases around these are more from a gaming industry, right? We have seen the Meta VR goggles, we have seen Google Lens, and so on and so forth. So all these are immersive goggles which take you into a different world. And mixed reality and augmented reality are a little bit more simplistic in terms of the applications, and they are more focused around practical use cases. And some of the use cases we have defined here, for example, you look at healthcare. So we are training for surgeons, right? The way, and Johnson others have this already implemented, or you use some of these technologies to solve phobia or mental patients and so on and so forth, right? In construction and architecture, this has been huge, especially AR, right? So you can render 3D images, you can do the designing, you can do the layouts and changes and everything, and you can have a virtual walkthrough of the entire, house or construction site or whatever, right? That gives the ability for engineers to be more optimal, and it can help you speed the construction process and so on and so forth. In education, this is used for learning. So for example, you can have immersive learning to learn some of the science subjects, making it more practical for you to look at, let's say, human body as an example, or some of the other astronomy, history. Now, this is slowly getting into a space where it's more virtual, right? Imagine learning history, and again, since we are in an Islamic setup, imagine learning history from an Islamic standpoint, and now those historical characters are coming to life. Now, there's a debate going on how ethical that is, and we'll keep that aside. But then these are practical use cases of AR and VR, where you can look at something, make it virtual, but make it immersive enough so that you can experience it, you can learn it, and then obviously remote work and some of the other use cases in the space. So that's where the technology is right now. In terms of where the technology is heading, I think there are various other use cases of this as well as technology expands. It's not in the scope to discuss everything today, but maybe just to give you one or two examples. What is happening in the industry is the evolution of these to link it to BCIs or brain computer interfaces. Now to make this even more experiential. For example, all of this is still virtual, right? You can see an object, you can try to touch it, you can change the layout and everything, but it's still virtual. You can't feel it, right? Imagine where you have sensations to touching and feeling these objects. Now that's BCI, and that's the entire simulation, and we have a separate topic on that to cover in the second session, inshallah, where now these BCIs are chips that you can place on your forehead or on the side of your this thing, and then now it gives you the ability to experience that real time, and you can have emotions and you can have feelings and smell and sound and so on and so forth, right? So that's making it even more intuitive, and it's actually bringing that virtual reality into the real world, right? There are haptics and sensory immersions, like we discussed. Digital twins and deep fake, that's another use case of this, where you can actually replicate someone in a fully deep fake as a digital twin, and that person can speak and talk like that, like you, and then that's virtual, that's not real, right? And so on and so forth. So that's the evolution where these technologies are heading into. And I think that's a good point to take a pause and start asking some questions around how ethical this is, and where does this stop, what does Islam say about it. So I'll pass it on to Brother Adnan for some high level comment, and I think Brother Naveed may have one or two follow-up questions on this.
Barakallahu feek. I don't know. I don't represent Islam. I'm just a minor student, so it's just a few pieces of wisdom from the Quran that we can read from that I might share a little bit. Before I talk about that, the applications of mixed reality are amazing, right? Like for example, I work with a hospital system, and we're talking about how mixed reality and augmented reality can actually help in surgeries, where the doctors, the nurses, they can see exactly what's going on, and through the aided mixed reality, augmented reality, how you can have more successful surgeries. The doctors are not having to guess as to what's happening. The AI is there telling them this is where they need to go. This is the procedure that they want to use here. There, those kinds of simulations you can build. You can use it for training. There are so many benefits of all of these technologies. Just like everything else, there's benefits in things. There's harms in it. With a pencil, you can write. You can write, you can share wisdom with people, or you can stab somebody. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Hadid, we're going back to Surah Al-Hadid again, it's a beautiful surah, it's a central surah. For example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَأَنزَلْنَا الْحَدِيدَ فِيهِ بَأْسٌ شَدِيدٌ وَمَنَافِعٌ لِلنَّاسِ. That we sent down iron, we sent down metal in this dunya. There is great disbenefit through wars, through metal. You can build swords, you can build shields, you can build bombs, atomic bombs, but there's also benefits. وَمَنَافِعًا لِلنَّاسِ وَلِيَعْلَمَ اللَّهُ, so that Allah can test you. مَنْ يَنْصُرُهُ وَرُسُلَهُ بِالْغَيْبِ, who is going to aid Allah, contribute positively using these advanced technologies, who's contributing positively in the path of Allah when nobody can see them. Inna Allah wal Qawiyyul Aziz, and to Allah belongs all of the power and authority. So that should be the rock we should sit on when we expose ourselves to all of these advancements. And there's a lot of benefit, and then there's also harm. And who are you? You need to find yourself in the right path. Are you going away? وَمَنْ يُرِدِ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا, is this the extent of your knowledge, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Najm, ذَلِكَ مَبْلَغُهُم مِنَ الْعِلْمِ, this is the extent of their knowledge, that all they are, this dunya is consuming them, and those are the ones who are using it negatively. And those who are using positively, they're having to put in extra work and extra effort to see how I can take this amazing thing and use it to the benefit of the society, benefit of the ummah, benefit of the world, and how can I become not a dead weight in this dunya, but I am giving something back as a as active gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah, you gave me this knowledge, you gave me access to this technology. How can I use the risk that you gave me, and how can I use that to contribute positively to the society, whether I see the outcome in this world or not? Oh Allah, this is the best this is the best thing that I can do. This is why you sent me on this earth. You're testing me with all of these difficult situations. I'm doing the best that I can. Oh Allah, please accept my broken effort. وَتَقَبَّلْ مِنَّا إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. That's what I would say.
As a bit of a follow-up, Brother Nan,
Yeah.
can you touch upon so this is something I also see a lot coming out from the Muslim world, from
Mm,
the camp of people that always try to resist progress and try to resist technology, right? They always bring up the issue of boundaries and modesty, for example,
mm,
right?
mm,
There was a time when even I think it was debated should we use webcams on like Islamic classes on Zoom, right? I've
mhm.
been part of those discussions. So, with avatars, and a lot of times, I mean, we've all seen this and been exposed to it, right? Sometimes avatars, characters in
Mm.
video games, right, and whatnot,
Sure.
are very, very objectified or very provocatively dressed and stuff like that. So the issue of modesty and boundaries in VR, right? Can you touch upon that? Because that I feel like is a psychological barrier for a lot of Muslims, right? To get into this and to kind of, accept it and take it in. What can Muslims do to uphold their haya in VR spaces?
Just have a sense of haya, right? If you don't have haya, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, then do what you want, right? If you don't have shame and modesty, then you can do whatever you want. As long as you have a sense of haya and you're making the best choices that you can given these situations, that's all Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is looking for you to accomplish with your limited, infinitively limited abilities. Avatars, I don't see anything harmful in it. If your avatar is provocative, you're going to attract attention, just like you can dress provocatively, whether you're male or female. You're going to attract negative attention. How much of a testing situation you want to put yourself inside? How much fitna do you want to create, surround yourself with? And you need to be ready. If your niyyah is right, like we were talking about earlier, about 30 minutes ago, the amount of fitna you expose yourself to needs to be based on your niyyah. If you're going to be out there, you better be wanting to contribute positively, and that should be your compass. Your compass should be, I want to be a positive contributor in this dunya, and I'm going to try my best to ward off and stay on Siratul Mustaqim. And there's many other paths that I could have taken, but I'm trying to choose this Siratul Mustaqim that's right in front of me right now, that I can see. This looks right. This looks correct. My compass is to my niyyah to be pure, and this is for the sake of Allah. And you make the choice therein. So if you need a provocative avatar to be able to do that in a given situation, that's fine. For example, in a given situation, you can forgive somebody, or you can say, okay, no, you killed my brother. This person needs to be executed. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you the choice, right? You can choose to forgive, or you can take revenge. Neither is good or bad in the sense, but one is better. One is better. So making those choices are not easy. Life is not easy. So I don't know what to say. I keep going back to the same concept, but the principle is really simple. But the principle that we've been talking about is really simple. Just make sure your compass is pointing in the right direction.
So I have a quick follow-up on that, Brother Adnan. So I've seen
Yeah.
recently there's a Muslim company. I've not done enough research about what exactly they are doing in this space. Keep getting their videos on my feed. So what they're trying to do is using VR simulate historical Islamic times, right? So they'll say,
Yeah.
what does it feel like to be in,
Sure.
first century Medina city,
Sure.
something like that, right? Now, one of the things which is scary is they try to simulate Ashabil Kahf, right? What does it feel like to be in the cave of the
Sure.
companion, right?
Yeah.
Now, when we read back and we read this, Alhamdulillah, every Friday, all of us are
Alhamdulillah.
aware of the story. There's a reason why Allah did not go into details of that
Details.
story, right? There's some things that are hidden, and that's from His hikmah, because people now get into details and then start arguing about what is this versus what is that. So there are some information in there, and then not everything is in there. That's for a reason. Now, what we are trying to do is decode that and say, okay, how does it feel like to be in that kahf and so
Yeah.
on. And I've not seen the full thing, so I don't know how
Yeah.
extensively they have gone into. But then, are there should there be boundaries, right? And what can
Yeah.
be decoded and what should not be decoded and so on.
Absolutely. So, beginning of the Hadith sciences, there's a reason we have fabricated Hadith. There were these qasasun. They were storytellers. Why were they lying against Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Why were they lying against the companions? Because they were standing on their pulpits and they wanted more people to throw bags of dirham and dinar at them. They wanted to be popular. You take that and you go into in the staying with the AI and the mixed reality part for Ashabul Kahf, it's storytelling, right? It's really storytelling. What are you accomplishing? What is your goal there? Is your goal focused on how muttaqun they were and how they were trying to save themselves? If that was the goal of that video, I haven't seen it, so I can't comment on it. But if that wasn't your goal and it was just storytelling and just to get more clicks, whether you're using fabricated narrations or you're just making stuff up just so that you can have an quote unquote Islamic experience, no, that is the wrong niyyah. That is absolutely the wrong thing to do. So that's what I would say about that. For example, I just wanted to just passing reference. And Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, he was also struggling with popularity. So he was reaching out to Sahaba to give them advice, right? And for example, there's a famous hadith, I have it over here. It's captured in Tirmidhi, where he reaches out to Aisha radiallahu anha and says, "Can you give me advice and make sure the advice that you give me is not too overburdening on me. It's actually simple advice that I could actually take. So advise me." So she said, "Assalamu alaikum. Amma ba'd fa inni sami'tu Rasulullah yaqul," that I heard Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Man iltamasa rida Allah bi sakhat nas kafahu Allahu mu'nat nas." That whoever holds on to the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, regardless of the displeasure of the people, the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make the people's love increase for them, roughly speaking. وَمَنْ الْتَمَسَ رِضَى النَّاسِ بِسَخَطِ اللَّهِ. And whoever is holding on to pleasing people despite the anger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَكَلَهُ اللَّهُ إِلَى النَّاسِ. And then Allah will leave him to the sake of the people, to the hungry wolves. Right? Wassalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. It was this is a little bit of history, but it was a taunt at Muawiyah radiallahu anh, from Aisha radiallahu anh. So that should be our goal. So you can use these technologies to do amazing positive things, to train people on Umrah and Hajj, and to show the Medina of the old, and so that you can connect with those people and understand what they were going through, so you can appreciate what was happening in the Jahiliyyah period versus the versus after post Nubuwwah alayhi salam. So you can then appreciate the psyche of the people at that time, how slavery was rampant, and how Islam came and it created a system to actually promote the freedom of for the slaves and the servants, right? You can understand how intermixing of genders was happening, how Masjid al-Nabawi, how the culture in Masjid al-Nabawi was on a day-to-day basis. What did Fajr look like? What did Dhuhr look like? What did Asr? What did Jum'ah look like? How did Eid look like? How the Salatul Istiqa, the prayer, Istisqa, the prayer, Salah of the rain, how did that look like? So you can appreciate and get possible hints and answers to gender norms and social norms, et cetera, et cetera. So you can use those positive things in the authentic hadith. And if you want to just do storytelling, of course you can use it for that. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be the judge.
So speaking of like storytelling,
Yeah.
sort of related to that. Now, okay, let's say people have gone beyond that mental barrier of whatever haya, or this
Mhm.
is just something new or whatnot, and then they get immersed into this space, right? But
Mhm.
then what about the issue of like escapism and time wasting and
Mhm.
maybe so, mental health issues, addiction, but specifically escapism, like people who I mean, youth, who play video games, and nothing wrong with that, but they're just obsessed over it. Funny story, for the first time I ever went to Medina, the first time I ever did Umrah, my taxi driver, it's hilarious. He was actually driving, like he had his legs on the steering wheel. That's how he's turning the steering wheel. And he's just scrolling to TikTok the entire way. And I'm like, I came to do Umrah, not die a shaheed already. Like, you know what I mean? Um, we see this throughout the Muslim world and throughout Muslim communities, this hyper addiction to escapism and just time wasting, right? So if you can comment on that.
Every heartbeat should remind you that you're alive for that one more second to do something positive and earn Jannah. Every single second that every single heartbeat should remind you that you're earning Jannah. What am I doing in that time? Now, obviously, that doesn't mean that you let Islam consume you. You do need escapes. We all need escapes. For example, in Surah Al-Jum'ah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, right, in Jum'ah, during Jum'ah, there's no escape, right? Stay with the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Listen to the dhikr, right? And only وَإِذَا قُضِيَتِ الصَّلَاةِ فَانْتَشِرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ. Only when the salah is over, then you leave. And the Friday prayers, and then you can go and shop around. What with the markets that are out there, you can get entertainment, whatever you want. فَابْتَغُوا مِنْ فَضْلِ اللَّهِ وَاذْكُرُوا اللَّهَ كَثِيرًا. And then while you're doing your escape, while you're on a vacation, while you're, on sitting on a roller coaster, while you're browsing TikTok and Instagram or whatever, وَاذْكُرُوا اللَّهَ كَثِيرًا. Just continue to remind yourself of Allah a lot and your purpose. And then clock is ticking, your heartbeat is still beating, and it will only it's the number of beats are only lessening, and your death is coming closer and closer. Have you earned Jannah yet? If not, that's what you should be worried about and prepare yourself. So nothing against entertainment, nothing halal entertainment, obviously, nothing against escapism, as long as you constantly have that sense of dhikr not just in through lips and a wet lips and tongue, right? It's dhikr of the heart. That are you thinking about your purpose? Let this be an escape. Let your nerves be calmed. You attended the 4 hour TISA class. You need to relax a little bit. You overdose. Your brain is fried. You need a little bit of escape. You need a little bit of brain rot. To kind of just go through and not think too much. That's okay. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Allah Subhanahu wa Taala allows you to do that as long as you don't forget your original purpose. That's what I would say for that.
I think I would like to add to that is the way these gaming industries are designed. It's hundreds and billions of dollar industry now, right? And one of the primary reasons to attract young kids and young adults is to create these immersive experiences in the games so that people get so attached to it and they get addicted to it in some ways, right? They employ psychologists who are paid extremely high amounts of salary to do research and to create these sensations which will trigger addiction in one way or the other, right? So it's already crossing moral and ethical boundaries from the gaming industry standpoint because they are purely commercial, and that's the focus on. You look at some of these games, and if you look at our young kids playing this, the way they get hyper in terms of sensation and the behavior, and if they are playing games for too long, the way they will interact with their siblings and with their parents, it's all reflective of what these games are made of, right? So that's a real threat, a real challenge, which both as parents and even some of us who are playing games, we have to be really careful about, right? And then into escapism, I think it goes into the direction of how much time we are wasting, lahu and lagu and all that, right? And then you look at the virtual worlds, and in the fact that people may enjoy virtual worlds more than real worlds is again an extremely scary notion to have, right? It's a funny story when you were talking about this. Recently, this Minecraft movie was released, and my
Mm,
kids were behind me to take me
mm,
to see the movie, and we hadn't seen a movie in a long time, so we actually went for the movie. And then I had no idea about Minecraft. All I knew is these are these blocks and they can create things and so on and so forth. And then I was really into the movie from the beginning because I wanted to understand what this is about and what the kids are doing in their own time, right? And I won't go into it's not a movie review. But then each of the characters, they had some challenges in the real life, and they were trying to escape that real life going into the
mm,
virtual world. And when they go into the virtual world, they realize that the virtual world, while there are things in your control, like you can create things and you can do whatever you want, the virtual world also has challenges. And I'm glad they showed that part of it where there were threats to life and it was all about survival now. And Minecraft has I understood Minecraft has two modules. One is the creative module and one is the survival module, right? In creative module you can create things. In survival it's all about threats and how do you eliminate those, right? So now it became a mix of both where you're constantly struggling to survive, and at the end of the movie, towards the end, these characters realize that it was better for them to be in the real world, right? So they all decide to go back and they join hands together and they find one way or the other to come back to the real world. Except for one character who feels that there's nothing for him in the real world and he wants to continue staying in the virtual world. Eventually, looking at all his friends that he's made during his journey, even he decides to come back to the real world, right? Now they all come back and then they change their lives because they were all struggling for one reason or the other. They come back, they change their lives, and now they are all successful in their respective things. Now, my kids had a different takeaway because they saw everything onto a bigger screen. I had a different takeaway, and I told them, I sat down and I said, hey, you know what this movie really means? It means that the real world is the real thing and virtual world is useless, it's virtual. So from now on, you guys are on 100% detox and you will not have access to any devices moving on, right? It's all about real. Do your arts, crafts, sports, whatnot. No more devices for you. And they were like, they were like, what did just happen? We just went for a movie, and how are we
mm.
getting penalized being detox? Alhamdulillah, we tried and implemented that, and I won't say it's been like 4+ weeks. they are still on 100% detox. They still want to go back to a certain extent, but it's reducing, right? To an extent where they are not looking. But then if they get a chance, like if we are not watching, they get a chance on access to the device, they will immediately go it. So imagine an 8-year-old being so ingrained in these technologies and these games that escapism is becoming a real thing, right? And then obviously their mood changes, their behavior changes, and it has an ongoing impact on families and then in turn socially and so on and so forth. We go for, let's say, sorry, I'll just make a last comment. You go in social gatherings and you see your teenagers just sitting in a corner, not talking to anybody, right? But they are very active on the social channels, talking to their friends or virtual friends or whatever, right? So that's a real challenge again. How do we
Mhm.
break this barrier and get back into reality versus all these virtual realities, right?
Yeah. The beautiful example. One thing that should be added, and this is likely a good advice, inshallah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Islam teaches us that we can't just be by ourselves and pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and doing ibadah. Ibadah, part of this life is to engage with the world. So through these escapisms and these multi mixed realities and whatnot and Minecraft kind of games and all of that, my daughter loves it as well. Um, just remind your children and remind those who are in this situation who are just consumed into just a virtual world because it's an escape from this dunya that if their niyyah is right, if their niyyah is the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they're doing themselves a disservice because they're disconnecting from the real impact they can make in the real world that they live in. The impact that they're making in the virtual world, maybe Sheikh Eugene can comment on it. If the niyyah is right, maybe they will get reward, but the impact is not there. It's really just consider that non-existent. You need to make impact in the real world. Unless you're going to the masajid, unless you're going to Jum'ah, unless you're engaging yourself in the society, how are you going to know this person needs my help? This person I can make smile. This person I can do a little bit of therapy with. This person can make me feel better. I am down. This person I can gain education from. This person I can learn from. This person I can teach. This person needs, whatever. And for example, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam made it easy for us, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it easy for us. When you expose yourself to the world, and if you get harm as a result with your niyyah being correct, you're rewarded for that. You're rewarded when people harm you, and your objective is to do the right thing. How are you gonna know where you are needed or where you have a need unless you expose yourself to the dunya? So that should be our main objective. Like for example, the the white collars who don't ask when they're in need. It's in the Quran, right? Who don't ask for a handout even though they're badly in need. How are you gonna know that they are in need and they need financial support if you don't engage with them and you're stuck in the virtual world? So that we need to be cognizant of. Not that escapism is the wrong thing, period. No, no. Islam is not black and white like that. Especially when it comes to social interaction. It's never black and white. You're constantly struggling to make the right choices. Escape is good. Get your sanity. Go back. Go back and continue to fight. And continue to fight for the next heartbeat and for that Jannah.
So a bit of a follow-up question on this topic. It's definitely a very nuanced topic, and I think it depends on the answer you get depends a lot on the context and where the person you're asking lives and so on and so forth, right? This is a question for the both of you, brother Anand, brother Yusuf, right? When it comes to escapism using like video games or um so my question is two parts, right? The first part is I know people, and I'm sort of one of them, where they live maybe in a small community, right? A smaller Muslim community, but they sort of tune in to bigger like podcasts or um I guess a bit of a VR of other massages around the country, right? To make them feel like they have a sense of a Muslim community, right?
Mhm.
So maybe people who live in like very rural areas, they're like the only Muslim in like a 15-mile radius or something, right? If they sort of immerse themselves into the content of a certain I don't want to mention names, but a certain institute or something, right? Or they join in on the live streams of every Jama'ah of a certain masjid to kind of make them feel like I have a community. Like maybe reverts, for example, might have this problem, right? Or this challenge. What do you think of that? Whereas they're immersing themselves into maybe a bit of a virtual Muslim community, a virtual Muslim world, but maybe at the expense of their actual physical family or at the expense of the actual physical community. How would you comment on that? And the second question, I'll just ask it so maybe you can give a more comprehensive answer. What about those people who use to keep their kids off the streets? Like people who maybe grow up in rundown areas or dangerous neighborhoods, right? Or areas where really, if you let your kids even play outside, there's a high chance they'll end up in the wrong crowd. And there's a high chance they'll get exposed to maybe drugs or things of that nature. You're not in the social economic status to move out of that community. There are many Muslims in this situation, right? That they can't afford to go to a suburb, they can't afford to go to a better place, and they know that if they let their kid just go out, their kid is very likely to get exposed to so many things and mess up. So might as well keep them at home and keep them busy with video games or something, right? How like I'd love to hear your thoughts on this whole scenario.
Well, quickly comment on tech and then I'll let Brother Adnan comment. I think to your first question, where you are looking at other communities for knowledge or for more interactions, right? Whether it's virtual or not. I think that's still something which is very grounded because these are real people, real talks, real discussions, right? So it's not completely disassociating you with the real world. So it's one way or the other, still genuine connections, still human connections, and it's not escapism in that sense, right? Maybe you're doing it to learn and then to implement some of these things. Like when we were moving here a couple of years back, we spent a lot of time in researching about the area and everything is online. We looked at different masjids, even went through this virtual experience on how it looks like, right? And then at some point, it did cut us off from the city that we were moving because then we thought, oh, this is so grand and this is so good. And coming from India in a city like Mumbai, where everything is so crowded and everything is so small, I think it gave us that kind of a sense where yes, something is better. We are making the right decision, but at the same time, it kind of cuts you off with your base reality, right? So that there is always a challenge. Like Brother Adnan said, it's up to you. Every case is unique. You measure, and then based on your scenario, you kind of adapt to it, right? But I think the other aspect is really scary. With again coming from an AI background, I would comment on that. Like for example, we as individuals like to hear certain type of content, right? Let's just take Islamic viewpoint, for example. Now, I like to listen to certain type of scholars, and then that's my bubble that I would like to stay, right? Now, imagine a scenario where you have created an AI replica of your favorite sheikh, and he's only saying topics which you like, right? So you're picking and choosing aspects of religion which you like, and you're listening to it all the time. So it's using Gen AI to create new content. It is a real digital avatar of your favorite sheikh, but it's only saying the things which you want it to say, right? So that's escapism, and that's really scary because what will then do is it will continue cutting you off from the real world, and you'll never have diverse perspectives, never have those things, and so on and so on. And that's really scary because at some point, your vision, your goal, and your thinking will continue to become narrow and narrow and narrow to a certain extent.
Mm.
And that's real, that's happening, right? I'm not saying people are doing it at Islamic level, but then like the example that you gave of the deep fake video, even I came across that video, and then I was like, what has happened? President Trump has just visited this country, and then this guy is now commenting that they just did to make him happy. What did was all that show? But then I realized this video was fake, and they really did everything that they had to do, right? So yes, those things are.
You did a great job, by the way. That was amazing.
You send me that video, Naveed. Yes, sir.
We'll do, inshallah.
Yeah, just quickly commenting on I think you gave an example of the revert who is in a remote place, can't access the Muslim community, so they're engaging virtually, and you're saying that's going to deter them from actually visiting the Muslim community of the masjid. That might happen at the beginning. There's a lot of reverts that are scared in their situation. Are humans. I don't have the data to tell you, but I can assure you if they're normal for the most part and they're not ultra introverts or ultra scared, or the situation is not an outlyingly difficult situation, they will make their way to the masjid and they'll eventually break that barrier. Yes, a natural curve. It's just that's just going to happen. So I'm not sure if that is something you need to worry about. As far as the children exposed to, in a dangerous neighborhood or something like that. Alhamdulillah, for the virtual windows we can open to expose our children to, not just games and video games, but videos, Islamic videos or uh, educational videos, homeschooling. There's just so many beautiful options that technology can give you. وَمَنَافِعٌ لِلنَّاسِ فِيهِ بَأْسٌ شَدِيدٌ وَمَنَافِعٌ لِلنَّاسِ. There's harm in it and there's benefit. So just continue to follow the benefits. And again, it's a choice every single day, every single moment you're making, and you're saying, okay, this is the best choice at this time, given the situation. Oh, Allah help me with my choices. The istikhara mindset. The istikhara mindset. It's so important. I'm going to say that again. Oh, Allah, I don't know, you know. You are all knowing. I have no knowledge. I have no ability. Oh, Allah, if this is good for me, then add barakah in it and bless me in this path and make this path easy for me. If this is bad for me in this dunya and my akhirah and for my children and for my family, then put barriers in front of it, oh Allah. And whatever you decree for me, oh Allah, then make me pleased with it. Or you just accept the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you continue to forge forward. That's the attitude reset we need in these difficult, well, all times are difficult. Again, it's all relative. We think we live in difficult times and previously it was easy. That's all like nostalgia. That's all fake. That's fake. Okay. Every generation is difficult. Every situation is difficult. We think things are getting, difficulties are, you can look at it from another angle. That deterioration, the move to entropy, to the science folks, is happening. That's part of nature. Things are going to get more disorderly. Things are going to get more chaotic. Things are going to get more evil. It's just part of the deen. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises, Wallahu mutimmu linuri. And Allah is going to perfect His light. Just continue that bus that is taking to that Noor on Siratul Mustaqim. Just make sure you continue to hop onto that bus. You can hop off a little bit and do that escapism that you need for some human sanity, the animalistic side of you, and hop back on that bus and continue to be those who are contributing to spread the nur of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is going to perfect His light through us, through the people. So just continue to just aim toward that.
No, we do have one question from the audience. This goes back to the haya modesty issue we were talking about. So, what if we have modesty or haya when we approach content creation, right? But then our videos are exploited by AI, right? How do we address our safety in these situations?
Right, from a tech standpoint, there's nothing that we can do because no matter what you do, like if it's for sisters doing content creation, even if you're in full hijab and everything, right, people can still misuse. So that's real, that's happening. There's nothing much that we can do about it. Even the voice can be used in different ways. So let's say some sister decides that, even for brothers, right, we decide not go on video, still do content creation, but do it on voice, right? That can still be misused. So from a technical aspects, I think unfortunately there's nothing much. I mean, there are laws in certain countries to protect the digital abuse of information and data and so on. But then again, it's being done by AI now. It's not even humans doing it. So now it becomes even more challenging on how do we, it goes back to our governance framework, especially in Muslim countries and stuff like that, where um, especially with the new LLM that was announced recently. Let's see how they are taking into account the societal aspects of it, the cultural aspect, religious aspect, and what kind of guardrails are being put in creating these models. But that threat is real, may happen. Unfortunately, that's what it is.
Sure. What I would say is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to lower the gaze. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala acknowledges the fact that you will look once, right? You can be you can completely isolate yourself from social media, and then you're going to create your own little bubble, and your area of influence and impact is going to be very limited, and you're not exposing yourself to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may have given you abilities where you can expose yourself to a larger demographic, where you can make a more positive impact. And maybe social media is beneficial for you if you have a lot of knowledge to give. So you just have to make those choices constantly. I am not of the school that you need to just continue cut off from social media because it's all haram out there. There's you have to make choices out there, and you just continue to lower your gaze and do the best that you can, especially if you have something to give and contribute, and it's just not break rot content that you want to consume. There are on the YouTube University, on Instagram University, there's so much benefit, so much to learn, and you're missing out. And you're in your bubble, and you're with your local sheikh or local yes man club, right? That you're part of, and you're not able to contribute to the society. Islam is not about you, Habib. We have to understand. It's deen is not just about you. It's about the dunya and what you can do with it. And the larger your circle of influence becomes, and you have to continue to push toward that. I think, in my view, in my humble view, you are doing it better service to the deen that way. And that's what I would say.
Well, Jazakallah khair to both our panelists, Brother Adnan and Brother Yusuf. I think we've been on for an hour and a half. So, inshallah, we'll wrap up here for this session. But we do have many more interesting discussions, inshallah, including a third topic that we wanted to discuss, but we couldn't because of time limitations. Inshallah, we'll cover it in the next session. So, please do join us for our next session. Next session, we have Dr. Shuaib joining us from the UK. Just go and read his bio. The guy has like 2 PhDs as an alim. Incredible. You don't want to miss that talk, inshallah. So, inshallah, join us next time this Friday. And until then, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam, barakallahu feek.